Welcome to the Reversion to the Mean podcast, hosted by Justin Castelli of RLS Wealth Management and Kevin of ferventfinance.com. On Reversion to the Mean, Justin and Kevin will discuss the week's top financial Twitter shares and distill them down to what's necessary and what's noise. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing discussed on this podcast should be considered professional advice. The opinions expressed by the hosts are theirs and theirs only.
Welcome to episode 40 of Reversion to the Mean. The big news this past week was Goldman Sachs acquired United Capital for, I think, $750 million. Justin, what's your take on that?
I'm not a big fan of it. You and I were just talking about it a little bit offline, but and I've talked about this before. I think Fortune Financial went public last year as well. And I'm not a fan of it because these are registered investment advisory firms that are supposed to be as close to conflict free as possible, fiduciaries. And now you're bringing Wall Street to that world. And I don't know if Wall Street can merge into that and not start pushing their product or having goals that need to be met. And, you have to worry about quarterly earnings and what are sales going to be this year and what's United Capital doing for Goldman's bottom line. And I just think that brings, there's no conflict-free way to work with clients as an advisor. You can minimize them significantly, but there's always going to be some type of conflict that might, expose itself. But this just brings on a whole new level that wasn't there before. And I really feel bad so if you don't know, United Capital is a huge RIA. From everything I know about it, like that's the way they do business, the way they look at planning and the holistic approach is the way I would say you'd want to do it. But it basically rolls up other RIAs. So, a registered investment advisory firm gets too big to kind of continue to grow on its own, decided, hey, I want to team up with these guys, and they get absorbed into United Capital. You have all these firms that join United Capital because they had one mission, and it's basically anti-Wall Street, became a part of the firm, and now all of a sudden they're bought by something that they wanted to avoid being. So I feel bad for the advisors that bought into United Capital. I doubt they had very much say in this. Maybe they get paid out of it as well so that they could leave if they wanted to and try to set up again, but I doubt that's going to be very feasible. So I feel bad for them. I also feel bad for the clients. They signed up with a independent fiduciary firm, didn't have all these conflicts, and now all of a sudden they're bought by Goldman Sachs, which Goldman Sachs in itself doesn't necessarily mean that there's conflicts, but we all know how Wall Street works. I just don't see how they keep that line and say, okay, we're going to let United Capital operate as it always has, and we're just going to take the revenue from it that we want to, and that's why we bought it. That very well could happen, but I don't think that that's the case. And I wonder, this gets kind of like real deep into fiduciary. Where does the fiduciary role come into play for clients and advisors when selling to a Wall Street type firm? Is that a breach of fiduciary standard? I don't know, because it's not really making recommendations for the clients, but is that in the client's best interest to join up with a firm that might change the way business has been going, that brings in some additional conflicts? So it's too early to be told. In some ways, I can't fault them. If they grow so big that this is the only exit strategy, is no other RIA out there is going to be able to buy them. Maybe like the Carson Group or something could have forged some type of way, but RLS Wealth Management's not coming up to United Capital and saying, hey, I'll give you $700 million and call it a day. So it's just kind of, I don't like it. I understand why they would do it. I feel bad for the advisors and the clients, and maybe this all works out for the best and I'm wrong about it, but I just think it doesn't look good. And it's also kind of sad for the RIA space to see like one of the firms that was held high go to the dark side, if you will. And I don't mean everybody on that side of the business and that operates at Goldman or a firm like that is bad, but it is just totally different, and it's almost like going to the dark side. So it'll be interesting to see where it plays, but I know that that was the plan. It had been rumored that he was going to try to sell it at some point. I just didn't know it was going to be to Goldman. But the big thing, and then my final take on this, is there's a lot of rumblings about advisors should be concerned because now Goldman's moving down line, and Vanguard was concerned and Schwab's a concern, and now you have Wall Street figuring out because Goldman's got their online bank with Marcus, they've got the Apple Card, now they have United Capital, so they have all these services that they can service the larger population. And is that a threat to us advisors? And Me personally, I'm naive. I'm maybe a little overconfident. I'm not threatened by it. I think that it's very much a relationship based business for a lot of people. And I don't know if that relationship still carries over on a Goldman Sachs. And it could be good. They could service a lot of people who wouldn't get serviced before by putting these pieces together and offering a good kind of tech based relationship that gives people advice where they wouldn't have got it before. So it could be good. So
Well,
that's what I
since
think.
yeah, since you only had just a little bit to talk about that, so I'll just share two things. One, when you're looking at the client, right? Like, mom and pop in Iowa, do they want their financial planning firm owned by Goldman Sachs? I don't know, probably not in my mind. So yeah, definitely thinking about the clients in that scenario. I think a lot of clients could potentially be upset. And number two, with what you said about being a fiduciary, the management of Goldman Sachs has a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders. And if you're, have a fiduciary responsibility to your shareholders, how do you also have a fiduciary responsibility, with your clients at the same time? So yeah, that's going to be a tough bridge for them to cross, I think. And I'm sure we'll see a lot of news about it coming through in the next couple months.
Let's go revisit your buddy who made all that money on Tiger. So the same guy who won 1.2 million betting on Tiger is now putting up 100 grand that he's going to win the next 3 majors. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I don't like saying mean things about people, but this guy is an
Say it.
idiot. He's an idiot. Okay. First off, money is fungible, right? So he just won $1.2 million. You can't do this like mental accounting thing and put that over to the side in some bucket, being like, okay, like that's play money now. Let's go do whatever we want with it. Now, I know he's only taking 100 grand of it, to only quote unquote to take 100 grand and bet it again. But you have to think of that as that's like money you have that you could be saving for retirement or putting towards your kids' education or paying off. I know he has debt, so paying off debt, things like that. And I just, I think it's a terrible idea for someone who, he does. I don't think he's not a high net worth individual, at least before he won this bet, to take 100 grand and put it on 100-1 long shot, and that's the odds he's getting here for Tiger to win the next 3 majors is 100-1. So he's just looking at the payout, which would be 10 million bucks. But obviously, this has never happened in PGA history. No golfer has won all 4 majors in the same calendar year. So this has never happened. So he's going out and putting 100 grand on something that's never happened to potentially win $10 million. And obviously, Business Insider is picking this up because it's, it's a crazy story. And, people are looking at it being like, oh, like, oh, that's crazy. But this is terrible, terrible thing to do with 100 grand when you have debt and other things going on and you're not a high net worth individual. If this guy was worth 5-10 million bucks and he wanted to go throw 100 grand on a bet, okay, maybe it's a little different. But he was someone who was in debt, got lucky and won over $1 million, and now he's gambling more of his money. So I can't stand it.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta get out with it when you got it good, and like don't tempt it. And this is why lottery winners end up broke within however many years.
Yeah,
Because,
exactly.
but so my only what if I was thinking about as you're talking, what if this guy was smart enough that he was able to leverage this bet to go make money speaking at different things, like, like, so basically he could recoup the 100,000 he might lose, so he's not out anything. And if he
Yeah.
wins, like, okay, it's 10 million and now he's going to write a book and all this stuff. So I wonder if there's an opportunity that through his stupidity, he could piece together 100 grand of, being interviewed and different things to make that back up. I
Yeah.
don't think he's that smart, but maybe. But he's a day trader, right? So that's his profession. So that's what these guys do is they roll the dice and go big or go home, I guess. But maybe since it's never happened, it's time for it to happen. He just knows.
Let's not give this guy any more airtime. So you had shared a piece from a relevant investor, a not so terrible retirement report.
Yeah, and I liked it. And my thought to it was what Mike led off with, is that we talk about so much negative stuff about retirement. Every once in a while, it's good to show when there's hope. So there's a Fidelity study that he just highlighted some things. So not a whole lot I want to talk about. I just wanted to put it out there that as bad as we paint the retirement picture for Americans, sometimes it's getting better, which is a positive. So it shows that like the defined contribution plans, participation's going up, and I think that we can attribute to like the auto enrolls. So a lot of places when you first start, they just automatically enroll you at a certain percentage in your 401k, and you have to opt out to not do it. So it's kind of the thought of, well, you're not you're probably not going to go enroll yourself if you have to physically go do it. Same thing, you're not going to unenroll yourself if you have to physically go do it too, is because we're lazy as people. So get them going and get the behavior going to get it started. So I think that's good to see. And then I was kind of shocked by the 401k balances that they show between 2009 and the first quarter of 2019. Like they're up 466% for overall, but then you break it down millennials, Generation X, and boomers, it shows kind of what they're up. It's kind of impressive. And I thought that obviously, maybe not obviously, but the millennials have the highest percentage increase from the average of 7,000 in 2009 to 130,000 basically in 2019. And I think a lot of that is that higher defined contribution rate combined with over the last 10 years, a lot of millennials probably hit higher earning levels. So they're able to save more. And obviously the market did some decent weight as well. But I think that's why their number looks so great is now they're making enough money and they can save more.
Well, they're also starting with such a smaller base because they started working
Yeah.
later, right? So percentage kind of just looks pretty crazy there. But what really caught my eye with these infographics here was just the average DC plan total savings rate. So DC plan is essentially a 401k plan, and employee plus employer combined contributions went from 11.9% in 2009, which I think is high, to 13.5% in 2019. That's like, if we hear all this stuff about how people are going to be ill prepared for retirement. If you're saving 13.5% of your income just in your 401k for retirement, and you might hopefully saving on the side and you have some other things going on, like you're going to be fine. Like, or you're going to be 90% of the way there. So I was just shocked that number is so high. Now, I think this is just Fidelity plans. So maybe for whatever reason, Fidelity, works with the larger employers and things like that, where maybe the people are comped a little better, so they're able to put more money away. But I was just shocked by that, because I would think that number would be 3.5%, not 13.5%.
I'd be curious to know what the breakdown was for that increase, of how much of that increase up was contributed or was result of employees contributing versus employer contributions. Because back in 2008, 2009, a lot of companies stopped their match or lowered it. And I've noticed personally that like they're coming back and starting to raise them again as the economy is better and unemployment is so competitive. So they're bringing the benefits up higher. So not that it matters at the end of the day, as long as that number is going up, that's what's most important. But I'd be curious to see if it's mostly the employees, so we see a good behavior, or if employers are able to put more in.
Yeah, I think it's a good sign for sure, and obviously the bull market in U.S. equities is definitely helping there. But hopefully it'll continue on, even if there's a little a little up and down in the markets going forward. But the New York Times had a piece about, I found this pretty interesting, how people get rich off IPOs out in Silicon Valley and San Francisco, and then they're moving to Florida and Texas. So the main guy they profile here, and I don't know if he was like joking with the New York Times. But did you see the picture of him, like that they profile in here, the pose he's kind of making? Just, it's ridiculous. But
Yes.
so they profile this 133-year-old individual who, he was employee number 16 for Uber, and he quit in 2018, and now he moved to Austin. So I think the plan for him was, well, he's probably got all this stock, and Uber was planning to IPO this year, so he wanted to be in a state with no state income tax, where California's top marginal tax bracket, I think the article said, is 13%. So you're going from 13% to zero. It's a pretty good move to make there. So, but like they're asking him, oh, so what are you doing with your time? So he's like, oh, I'm spending my time at local bars, watching college basketball, reading Harry Potter from start to finish, and playing video games. So like I didn't know if he's just kind of like putting one over on the New York Times for this article, but it was pretty interesting. But I guess a lot of people are doing this, and they had quoted some other individuals who are in similar situations with Lyft and other companies that have Dropbox and other companies that have recently IPO'd, where they'll take all their, they earn all their shares while they're working in California, and then move before like a big lot of them will vest, or before the company IPO, so that they can take all that income in the year where their residence is in a state with no state income tax. I don't think the article like was trying to say, oh, this is good or bad one way or the other. Is just kind of pointing it out that there's a migration from San Francisco and Silicon Valley to these other states for these young millennials who are worth millions of dollars after they are an early employee at one of these IPO companies. I just found it pretty interesting.
I'm curious how much he's going to get or how much he has to be able to do that? Like, does he have enough to really be able to do just video games and Harry Potter, or is he going to be harming himself because yeah, he did all right, but it's really not enough to live off of
He was number
for the long
16
term?
though, so I'm sure it's high seven figures. So I think he's probably all right.
Right. I think the positive I saw that to me that is somewhere along the line at least one person that they're all copying got some good financial advice to move before because they explained in here the key is to be you have to actually have a physical residence and have been moved out of California to avoid California taxes. And they said that like a PO box doesn't work. So I'm surely somebody tried to get
Yeah.
around the system and did a PO box and found out the hard way. But it shows that these young people are planning to minimize the taxes and keep as much of the money as they can. So I'm all for it. You got to imagine. I mean, it's hard to believe that they haven't figured out some way to capture some of that. I don't know how they would be able to do that, but pass some type of ruling that says, all right, if you move out the time of the IPO, a certain percentage,
Yep.
maybe it's however many years you were in California that ties to a percentage that has to be paid taxes on, so they get some revenue out of it. Because otherwise, there's no incentive to keep people there, and cost of living in San Francisco is stupid. It's out of this world, so it's good for them on many points. Save on taxes, move somewhere a little bit lower cost, and you're looking good.
Yeah, so next article is from the New York Times again. This one was about real estate's latest bid. Zillow wants to buy your house. Now, Justin, we've talked about this before. Zillow and Redfin and some other fintech companies are going out there and buying homes, trying to make the process easier from individuals and single family homes. These aren't like big apartment complexes. They're just your house. You want to put it up on the market, and they'll buy it from you after you just like upload some photos to their service online. They'll have someone take a look at the photos, and you enter in some information, and they're going to offer you an all cash offer. And right now, I think this is specifically in the Southwest. I guess Phoenix is the hotbed for this right now. But I think they think it's going to continue to expand. Now, when we had talked about this before, I thought, a lot of people who would kind of be in a crunch would resort to this because I would think they would be taking a pretty steep discount to sell their house to Zillow, who's just going to like paint it and put a new carpet and flip it in a month. But apparently, at least in Phoenix, I don't know. Phoenix must have some pretty hot real estate right now. But they interviewed one woman who I think she just retired, so she wanted to sell her house, and her real estate agent said that she would get around 375. Maybe she'd get 390, but she'd have to replace all the carpet and paint the walls. Well, she's 68 years old and just retired, and she didn't want to subcontract that out or paint it herself, and she just didn't want to deal with it. So she heard of Zillow buying houses, so she went online and did it all, and they offered her 382, and she didn't have to do anything. So she could have got 390. They offered her 382, and she just basically sold it very easily. And there's not the issues of Zillow doesn't have to give financing. They're just offering you cash. Like there's not any contingencies that could potentially, make the process drag out. So I'm sure from her perspective, the actual transaction was probably fairly seamless, I would assume. So, maybe she gave up a few $1,000s to kind of, make her life a little easier. So I thought, it's a pretty good deal from her perspective.
I was gonna say, can you put a price on that convenience and lack of stress and just being able to walk away, get your money if you need to? Like $8,000 would probably be worth it. And I guess that is a lot of money, but 390 to 382, you lose 8,000. What would you have lost if you had a realtor? Like,
Yeah,
I think there's still a fee on top of that Zillow takes.
exactly. Yep.
But still, I think that in the grand scheme of things, that $8,000 is probably money well spent. She's not going to miss it, and she'd have to deal with all that stress. So definitely very interesting. But didn't you say offline that with interest rates going up by like 1%, they're starting to have issues with these deals?
Yeah, so I guess Zillow and Redfin aren't buying that many houses, but there's this other company, iBuying is the name of the company, and they are buying thousands of houses. And just from interest rates at the end of last year rising, about 1% for the 30-year fixed interest rate, they were selling houses at a loss just from that because their algorithms weren't prepared for a 1% increase in interest rates. So if your algorithms aren't prepared for a 1% increase in interest rates, like something's going to happen down the road where something happens with real estate market or interest rates, and all these companies, or at least these parts of their businesses, are going to go belly up. At least that's my point of view. But they also had one more point that I don't think bodes well for them expanding throughout the U.S. Phoenix is a pretty, I guess, young real estate market. The houses aren't that old. They're pretty cookie cutter, but like if you move out to like the Northeast where houses could be built, in the 1800s or 1900s, everyone's house is different, everyone's lot is different. It's going to be a lot harder to do a process like this for them to actually come up with a fair market value where they don't end up getting screwed over because they paid too much or they're paying too little, so no one's taking their offer. So I think it's going to be harder outside of like the Southwest region, but we'll see if these guys are still around in a couple of years.
I want to go back to iBuying real quick. How do you build an algorithm that does not take into consideration 1% interest rates when they would have built that company, the Fed would have been talking about raising rates? Like, how do you not say, okay, what if it goes up? Like, that just shows you how I don't think that company's going to succeed.
Yeah.
All right, what we got up next? Small mortgages are hard to come by. The Wall Street Journal had a piece talking about how people who are looking to borrow smaller mortgages can't get approved because they're basically the banks can't make enough money. But what did you think on this piece?
Yeah, this one kind of, kind of made me a little upset. You have these folks who are in areas where they can buy a house for less than 100 grand, and they're lower income or lower middle income, and a lot of these people have decent credit, like credit over 600. They just don't have they're buying houses further down the market where they're $70,000 house, so they go to the bank to try to get a mortgage, and basically they can't get a mortgage. The banks are saying we're not going to lend you that little bit of money. You need to get a mortgage for over $150,000. And these people, are understanding their financial situation. They don't want to stretch themselves. They know what they can afford. They want a $50,000 mortgage or a $70,000 mortgage. They don't want a $150,000 mortgage. And unfortunately, the article discusses it's because the banks just can't make as much money on smaller loans like that. And I guess where the banks are really pushing now is the jumbo loans. So those are loans, I think, above $500,000 or so, and it's because they feel that they can push more of their proprietary products and probably shitty investment management and financial planning onto these, higher earning individuals once they sell them a loan. But I guess a lot of these people who are trying to go, further down the market to buy a home just can't get a mortgage, and now they have to resort to doing these kind of lease to own arrangements where it seems like they get screwed a lot on them just because of the way they're worded, and the contracts themselves just don't help the buyer that much. They kind of favor the seller, and resorting to finding credit somewhere else where you're probably getting hit with higher interest rates and more fees than are probably appropriate, but they have no other option because they can't get traditional financing. It's just very unfortunate.
And the banks wonder why people hate them.
Yeah.
Like the whole like how first off, to do a small loan, how much more expensive is it to run through and give somebody a $20,000 mortgage?
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine. So, okay, you don't make as much on that, but it's probably not costing you that much. Like it's all automated. It makes me mad as well because it's screwing these people who have done everything right. They just happen to be in a position where they don't have a high income where they want to buy a big house. But who's to say they don't have enough income? Maybe they just decided they don't want to spend a lot of money on a house and
Yeah.
they found a house that meets their needs and they don't need it. So it just makes me mad because it's all about greed. Like have a part of you can be a big bank, have a part of your bank that's designed to just do good. Like, okay, with this part of our business, we're not going to make a lot of money off of it. We're not going to lose money on it, but we're not going to make as much as other areas. But this is our ability to do good for the world and help people who are doing things right. They've got good credit. There's no reason to think that they're going to default on this loan. So let's go ahead and give this family the opportunity to own a house and start to build. But instead, we're not making enough money. And I guarantee they probably can make pretty good money off of it. It's just that it's not as much as the other ones. And pushing people to the bigger loans, like that just sets things up for another 2007 type of thing when the housing market runs up and all these people are getting these big loans, and like we don't learn from the past. But it does make me mad. I wonder if credit unions are any better. Like I wonder if these people, instead of going to a bank, would go to a credit union, which historically and stereotypically are a little bit more flexible.
Yep.
But I mean, who knows? Maybe there's an opportunity here for some startup tech company to be able to provide these smaller loans, use technology to be more efficient, and make the money on the volume, and be able to help more people. So I don't know. It does make me mad. I feel bad, and also another thing I thought about, and there's probably some flaw with my thinking. I didn't sit down to run numbers, but assuming that the amount that the bank wants you to take, you can get for the house. Like, so if they want you to take a $75,000 loan, but the value of the house is only 50, like you can't even get it.
Yeah.
But let's assume that you're in a position where you need a $20,000 loan because you have enough money to put down and you're just short 20,000. What if you just took the $75,000 loan, took the cash out basically, and then paid the extra off, and then just amortize it yourself over the time, and then you pay it off? Like, I wonder if that would work, or if there's some flaw that I'm not thinking about.
I think mechanically it would work fine, but just, emotionally, and who wants to be in that scenario? If you don't want to take out 50 more grand in debt than you need to just to pay it off as soon as you can. Yeah. From an emotional perspective, I doubt it would work, but from a mechanical perspective, it'd probably be fine. But yeah,
See, for me,
let's,
I would want to do it. I would want to say, screw you, bank.
yeah.
You're still not going to make any money off of me. I'm going
'Cause-
to take this loan. I'm going to pay it back down,
yeah.
and I'm going to pay this thing off in 15 years instead of 30. So you get screwed. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's my personality. If you tell me I can't get something, or I have to do it this way, and I find a way around it, I'm going to do it just to prove you wrong and let you know about it.
Yeah, I think we need to hook up with our fintech guru buddy Kyle Van Pelt. We'll specialize
Yeah.
in mortgages under $75,000 for people with decent credit, and boom, we got a company.
All right, and then we can just reversion to the mean every single day. We'd be like the guy. We'll move down to Austin and like live down there, and
Perfect.
that sounds stupid, which is a good tied into stupid is as stupid does, right?
Yeah,
Um,
so the only reason I'm sharing this one is because Forrest Gump is my favorite movie, and the title is "Stupid Is as Stupid Does." No, it was so Chenmark Capital. I think we've shared some of their stuff on here before. They're a private equity fund up in Maine, and every Friday they send out an email, and a lot of the times it's very thoughtful stuff. And this one caught my eye because it started talking about Tony Robbins. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Tony Robbins, but if he can, motivate people and get them off the couch and get them motivated to start a business or get out of debt or do whatever they need to do, then all the more power to him. But it talked about how this one individual that Tony Robbins kind of uses as an example labeled himself as just being a country boy. So he couldn't achieve much in his life because he just saw himself as this country boy, and he couldn't go out and take risks and learn new things and try new things because it wouldn't fit that mold that he kind of cast himself in. So, the article kind of goes into talk about how it's all about your mindset. And I know the real reason I shared this because I know Justin will have a lot to say about this, but it's all about your mindset, and you just have to change your mindset, and then that alone will give you a lot of that push that people need just to try something new. Even if it doesn't work out, at least you tried, right? And a lot of times it will work out. So it's just around some of these, people helping others change their mindset, and people realizing themselves that just that little change can have a big outcome. So I thought it was a nice feel good article.
you're exactly right that I am a big believer in mindset, and the tough thing is there's not any like actual hard concrete evidence that I can give people that my thinking works, other than that's the way I've always been, and it's always worked out for me. And maybe I'm lucky, but I do think that mindset says everything. So I was telling you before that, like, I don't let Roman and Leo, and when Silas starts talking more, say like they're not allowed to say can't, like especially if they can't do something. I don't like that. I don't want them to have that mentality just to tell themselves because they try something once and it doesn't work out that they can't do it. Like, you need to figure out what's keeping you from being able to do it. How can you get better about it, and figure it out? Because most things you can do, it might just need, you may need to take more time on it. It may not come easily, but you could do it. I told Leo today, he said can't, no lie. He said he couldn't do something today. I said, Leo, if we can fly to the moon, you can do this. You just need to figure it out. And I just think that like the way we phrase things and the way we view things can really shape the direction that our life goes. And I know that's easy to say when things are rolling well, but I also do think that if and when things don't go as planned, I'll still maintain that mindset, and that'll help move through a lot faster. I think that once you start thinking negatively, like the stupid is, and he's not smart enough to do it, like then you just narrow yourself in, and then you find yourself finding more reasons to stay there and why your life is harder, and it just never gets going. Whereas if you have the other end of the spectrum that you're looking out of, I think you give yourself more opportunity, and you grow faster and better. So it's not easy. I think if you tend to be more on the pessimistic side of things, I think it's hard to change that mentality, and I don't know how you do it, but if you can, I think once you get to that other end, you'll see why you should have been doing it all along. So again, I have no concrete evidence other than it's always worked for me. I can look at people that have similar views and kind of see the same thing in them, and I can see people who are on the other end of the spectrum that tend to be more pessimistic, and things always do go wrong for them. And I think it just kind of compounds itself, and that's why it is that way. So try to be positive if you can.
Yeah, I think if you're going to read any of the articles we shared this week, this is a quick one. It's like 5 paragraphs, but it's good to actually just read everything in there. It makes a lot of sense, and yeah, I just thought it was a well written piece. You had shared a piece from Ben Carlson, "Financial Superpowers," where Ben goes through all these different kind of financial superpowers that there are, and having them, or at least having some, is going to lead to financial success in the future. So, what financial superpowers kind of caught your interest?
Yeah, I didn't want to go through all of them. There's two that I wanted to talk about. I think the one that I like the best for like everybody is the ability to delay gratification. So I'm working on this with Roman. So Roman had first communion yesterday. My parents gave him like $50 and told him he could spend on anything that he wanted to. So immediately he's last night got on the computers looking for stuff. The boys are going to go run to do some shopping with Ange on Mother's Day, and he wants to go to Dick's, and he doesn't know what he wants to buy. I'm like, Roman, no, don't just spend this money because you have it. Like, unless you have something that you want to buy, just save it. I said, in 6 or 7 months, we'll put it in your bank account. It'll be worth more than $50 because you'll make interest. And then you can buy something you want rather than buying something just to buy it and then never using it. So he wants to buy a new pair of Kyrie basketball shoes. And I'm like, Roman, like, you have a pair of Kyrie shoes now. You're in soccer season. Your feet are still growing. That's a dumb use of your money. No, you're not buying. I need to let him do it so that when basketball season rolls around, his shoes are too small and he wasted his money. So the ability to delay gratification is a good one. I could personally work on that myself as well, because as you get older and you have the income to be able to go buy something little that you want, like, you just go do it because you can, when really you should wait. The one that I would like to master and have would be the ability to be satisfied with what you have, just from a standpoint of, I don't always act on these impulses, but I definitely see things that I want and that I would like to have. And I just wish I would just be content with what I have and not worry about having something new. Like an example is, I'm not a car person from the standpoint of I know anything about a car. I couldn't tell you anything about an engine. I couldn't fix anything, but I like the way cars look. So, driving down the road, you see the newest car. I'm like, oh, I would like to have that. And I just wish I didn't care. I wish I'd just be glad to have a car that gets me from point A to point B. It's safe and reliable and not worry about it. So that would be the one I'd want to be, just to be satisfied with what I have and not worry about accumulating anything. What about you?
Yeah, I think yeah, so I've written about this before, I've talked about it before, but I think the ability to delay gratification is huge for helping anyone's, financial circumstances. If you can delay gratification, it usually means you're going to be putting money away because you're not spending it today, and you're going to let it compound, and it's going to do even better things for you in the future. So that's one that I've, at least over the last 5-6 years, I've really concentrated on for myself to get better at. And I've, now that I've been doing it for 6 years, I've started to see the fruits of my labor with regard to that one. So I think that's huge. And if you can master that one, I think it's more valuable than, any of these kind of on the list. But one that I kind of caught my eye that I need to get better at too is the ability to witness your neighbor getting rich or buying stuff without getting FOMO. Now, it's more, I do this more in regards to like careers and income and things like that, where, you're always going to have friends and family that are going to have, a fancier job title and make more money and things like that, where I think it's harder to do that introspective review and, set your own goals that aren't being compared to your friends or your neighbors or your family and things like that. And just as, people who want to achieve things, that's hard to do because you're constantly kind of comparing yourself to others. You're seeing Justin, who's podcasting, blogging, running a business, 3 kids, all that stuff, and you're like, whoa, what am I doing over here? But all joking aside, I think it's just tough for humans to do in general. So that's just something that I personally think that I could be better at.
See, the FOMO that I get, I wouldn't say it's FOMO. I wouldn't say it's jealousy either, but I think it falls in this line. It's not from what other people have. It's from seeing people, maybe seeing what they have or what they're able to do, knowing that they don't work as hard as me. So, like, and this is like people professionally that like do the same thing that I do. I have a pretty good idea of what they make. just from experience and maybe working where they
ADVs.
work. Well, no, not only that, like having worked where they work and knowing what type of income that is there, and knowing there's no way they work even a fraction of hard as like a lot of us, not just myself, a lot of us that are running our own businesses. And I think down in the long run, it changes. And also that's not why I do it, but I look at, man, I'm busting my butt, and then I know this guy's not, and he's doing all these fun things, and he's making probably more money than I am. It's just like, and then I get past, I'm like, well, yeah, but I don't have to answer anybody. I'm doing what I want to do. I love what I'm doing, and we're not hurting financially. But that's where my FOMO is. It's more of, man, they don't work as hard as me, and they're enjoying things that I don't get to enjoy, or doing just as well as I am. So that's where mine comes. But I shouldn't worry about it. And it's short lived. Like I look at it for a second, I get jealous or frustrated, and I'm like, forget it. You can move on.
Yep.
You got any recommendations this week?
I don't really have any recommendations, but I did see I watched the Ted Bundy documentary on Netflix. Well, it's not a documentary, but it's a Ted Bundy movie on Netflix with Zac Efron. And I saw it being shared on Twitter and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, I'll check it out. I knew who Ted Bundy was, so I just wanted to see, Zac Efron plays him. I want to see how it was. It was all right. I give it like 3.5 out of 5 stars. I don't think it was a waste of time, but I wouldn't go out recommending it. So if you're thinking about it and that's like the genre you're into, go watch it. But if it's not, just pass on it. What about you?
Well, I probably won't watch that one. And two, my recommendation is, I think I've mentioned them before, and like the Amazon Echo Dot is what we have in our house, but the Amazon devices where Big Brother gets to listen in on your life, I am beginning to like and appreciate them more and more. So when we first got ours, it's just because I set up an Amazon skill and I wanted to know how it worked and to check it. And then like the boys use it every day to check weather. Roman uses it every morning when he comes downstairs in the basement. The first thing he asks is about the NBA scores from the night before. So like the convenience of just asking a question and not having to go type into Google to find it, we're beginning to like a lot. But then what I did today for the first time was sync the dots that we have upstairs so that they play the music at the same time. So it creates like one big household speaker, and it's pretty cool. So we are just barely scratching the surface on what they're going to do. We don't have any smart lights or anything like that, but I never thought I would care about just saying, like, Alexa, turn the lights off, but it would be pretty cool just to be walking out and save that energy of flipping the switch and just say it. So I'm becoming more of a fan of that and voice. So the Echo Dot, they have bigger ones and more expensive ones, but for us, it gets the job done.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's all I had this week. I just wanted to mention, since we are recording this on Mother's Day, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. And thanks to Ange for letting you record today.
Yeah, well, I told you our Mother's Day is not what most people would want for Mother's Day, but she enjoyed it. So to share with everybody. So we got up. Roman had first communion yesterday, so we got out of church today because we had church yesterday. Made her some breakfast, kind of lounged around for a little bit, which we don't get to do too often. And then we ended up cleaning and organizing upstairs. And I went to her and I apologized that this is what we ended up doing, because it's a crappy day. It's rainy here. If it was sunny out, we'd be outside and we were going to go to the parks and different things. And she said that she actually was really enjoying it because it's stuff we needed to do. And we were all doing it as a family. So yeah, so definitely thanks to her. I gave her a shout out on Twitter, and obviously we took care of her this morning and will the rest of the day. And happy Mother's Day, I guess belated, since this will be on Monday, to all the moms out there. So with that, we'll wrap it up. Thanks everybody for listening. Show notes at ferventfinance.com, allaboutyourbenjamins.com. If you didn't know, we're streaming these. We're not streaming. We're putting the video of these out on YouTube as well, so you can watch us if you want to. Probably just better to listen to us, but it's on the YouTube channel as well. And it's actually on the RLS Wealth Management YouTube channel, because it's the only one that we have. So check the blogs for the show notes, YouTube if you want to see us. And we will be back with you next week. So thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Have a great week.